Welcome to My Financial Coach Live.
Good morning, Jay. So, at My Financial Coach, we're reaching out to some of our subject matter experts to make sure that some of our listeners are able to get some of the wisdom that some of our subject matter experts have, and to address some of the concerns that they have surrounding money and some of the decisions that come with having a little bit of wealth. What I'd like to do is just give a little bit of background for our listeners. uh, why don't you give a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you providing that information and setting that stage. Of course, my name is Jay Knighton. I'm the owner of the law firm Knighton and Stone in the Woodlands, Texas, for 17 years. All we've done over here is practice estate planning, the tax aspects that coincide with estate planning, wealth transfers, and mostly transaction-based law. So I deal with this stuff on an everyday basis, and I'm one of the few attorneys in Texas that's board certified and have a Master of Laws in Tax. So all my background is based around wealth preservation and wealth transfer.
So, one of the things that we're going to address today is what happens when someone has a lot of wealth and then their children are faced with the dilemma that someone may be coming after them for that wealth in a very indirect way. So, let me set the background for you. Imagine that one of your clients comes to you and says, I think my kids are marrying someone that wants my money. And the scenario is the guy comes to you in your office and says, I've worked hard to give my family a great start in life. Recently, I feel that someone is taking advantage of one of my kids. I've seen my kids start wearing expensive clothes and driving around in something I don't even have. How do I make sure my kids realize that not everyone likes them, but rather like their money?
I meet with clients with this exact concern.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not every day, it's every other day. So I appreciate you asking this question because I see it from my clients in the greater Houston, Texas area. Many clients, no matter where they live or where they move from, they have the same concern because they've worked very hard to accumulate assets and they want to make sure that they're being responsible in transferring those assets to the next generation typically. So with your scenario, wealth transfer and how to responsibly do that or prepare documents that responsibly transfers that wealth when someone passes away, I really think of it as a four-step approach when I'm meeting with clients. And we're going to cover all four of those bases today. The first thing that I do is not a legal matter, but I want to find out how engaged the clients are with their children regarding wealth management. Most of the clients, if it's first generation, almost all the clients, but if it's even second, third generation wealth, they really had no coaching or instruction of how to chat with their children about managing assets and wealth preservation. So many people seem to leave that up to the children, and I explain to them what the clients have done is create a team of the attorney, wealth managers, and the CPA, and that team can provide a lot of instruction and guidance to the children if clients aren't comfortable doing it. But I do encourage clients to chat with their children about what good things they've done, the clients have done to make good financial decisions. Also share the bad things because the kids need to understand what can I do to replicate the success that parents have had. And quite honestly, the reason this question comes up is because the parents have had success in accumulating assets. So first thing I want them to do is look at resource material, use their team to convey those concepts and that knowledge down to their kids so that the children aren't having to start over from square one.
Mm-hmm.
They can piggyback off what the parents have, all the knowledge and wisdom the parents have accumulated over years of managing and growing wealth. So that's the first thing to do, because we can't really expect children to do a good job managing assets in the 7+ figure range when they don't have the skill set and knowledge to do it, and they're just expected to have learned it from some third party, when the parents really are the best ones to convey that knowledge. So that's number one, work with the kids. Working with the kids is great, but there's three other things we want to cover, because the children may be great, but centers of influence can be very destructive and manipulative. So one of the first things that I chat with clients about in the wealth transfer is being very private about what they own. And privacy in estate planning comes in the form of leaning more toward a revocable living trust for the estate plan rather than a will. The reasons there, a revocable living trust create a very powerful veil of privacy over assets. Revocable living trusts don't protect assets, but they create privacy because they really remove, by transferring assets to the revocable living trust, you remove those assets from a lot of public record databases. And those databases come in the forms of real estate and what you bought, what you paid for it, vehicle records. There's a tremendous amount of information available to the public for free of what you own, what you paid for it, how you've accumulated it. And with a revocable living trust, you remove a lot of that information from those public record databases, because people can't figure out easily what you own, but due to the fact that you've created your alter ego, a revocable living trust, to hold that title. So for children, if they have centers of influence, which could come in the form of a spouse, girlfriend, or just friends, if someone is targeting the child to indirectly get to parents' assets, removing the parents' assets from public record databases often will remove that child from the crosshairs of people that are targeting kids to get to the parents. So privacy is a big deal. The living trust also very privately contains the estate plan, so there's no public record when parents pass away. Extremely helpful for the children when it comes to them inheriting assets, because people can't easily figure out what they inherited or how they inherited it, due to the fact that that planning is in the very private revocable living trust. That's thing number two. Thing number three we look at is within the revocable living trust, so within the estate plan itself, making sure we prepare provision, we craft provisions so that the children inherit in a trust that springs into effect for them, for the child, when the parents pass away. If parents want to give access to the children while the parents are alive, using a trust to receive and hold those gifts is very important, because that kind of trust in virtually all 50 states, if you inherit in a trust from your parents, assets in that trust are protected from creditor claims and even divorces. So creditor claims can come in the form of a child that's targeted from someone who has a lot of debt and just poor money management techniques and skills, and that person creates a lot of debt during the marriage. Well, inherited trust assets aren't going to be subject to that debt. That debt cannot reach through the trust walls of protection. And that type of trust, if you recall, with a revocable living trust, there's no asset protection there, because you just generally do not receive asset protection if you take your assets and put them in a trust for yourself. But when someone passes away, such as a parent, transfers assets to a trust for somebody else, such as a child, tremendous asset protection laws attached to the inherited assets to protect those assets from creditors and even in divorce situations. So using a trust for the children, very important for that trust for the children to spring into effect. That's the analogy I use to paint a picture of this trust comes into effect at some point in the future when parents pass away. and children inherit in that trust to protect those assets. Furthermore, that trust, it not only provides an asset protection feature, most clients with parents that come to me with a higher net worth, they desire for those assets to remain in the bloodlines, not transfer out to in-laws who have a tendency to remarry or may have their own set of children. So those type of trusts keep assets in the family structure, such that when a child passes away far into the future, the trust itself dictates where the assets that remain in the trust, where those assets transfer, which is typically to the client's grandchildren. So trusts that we create within an estate plan keep assets in the family and protect assets. And they lead me into the fourth aspect that we're going to cover with clients, which I call responsibility. Those trusts we can build in features that create a very high level of responsibility for that child who's a beneficiary, so that child learns those asset management and preservation techniques even after the parents have passed away. The responsibility comes in many forms. Typically, it begins with the parents naming a trusted person to manage the assets in the trust. That person's known as a trustee. The trustee is going to make two kinds of decisions. They make investment decisions. They make distribution decisions for the beneficiary. So there's a myriad of different kinds of trustees you can select. Many clients favor individuals. There are professional businesses, corporate trustees. We know those as corporate trustees that have been in business for over 100 years, and their sole job is to manage trust assets for the children. Yes, they do charge a fee, but I'd rather clients pay 50 basis points for a trustee to manage the assets and make wise investment and distribution decisions than a child who's not ready to serve in that role lose all the money and effectively pay 100% in a complete loss of assets due to poor decision making. So with responsibility as a factor, we look at naming trusted advisors who make wise decisions and take action when they need to, and using those to serve as trustee, and then ease the children into the role of serving as trustee at some point in the future. What's wildly popular with clients is to require that child to serve as trustee for a co-trustee for a period of time. So as co-trustee, that child's not making all the decisions, but they've got a seat at the table. They must meet with the wealth management group and understand diversification and why we don't put all of our assets in a speculative investment because their buddies are suggesting it, or their spouses, in-laws want to buy into a project and use their money to fund it. So as a co-trustee, they're going to these meetings. They can bring these ideas up, and they have a committee or a group that's there to provide that guidance and gently correct missteps or avoid missteps. By easing them into that role, they're also meeting with a CPA and understanding how income taxes affect investments, and they've got to go to those meetings and participate in those meetings. And then after a period of time, which many clients like a 5 to 7 year window, then that child has the skill set to serve as trustee without the need of that committee approach or corporate trustee approach. So we're teaching the children responsibility even after with a trust, even after the parents have passed away, so that child can manage those assets. And the point I make to the clients, if the child's not trustee, they don't have to walk through fire. They just have to go to the trustee and justify the reason that they need a distribution from the trust. So the trust itself can have very flexible distribution provisions, such as distributions for health and education and maintaining lifestyle. But maintaining lifestyle is not elevating lifestyle for an in-law or in-law's family. It's maintaining the lifestyle that beneficiary is accustomed to. And clients can even tailor those distribution provisions to distribute income, for example, or utilize productivity incentives. So there's a lot of things clients can do within a trust to transition that wealth responsibly to the next generation. And so responsibility is that fourth factor. So as a recap, when clients come to us with that question, we're first and foremost focusing on how do we address the issue itself and provide that child with the tools to make wise decisions going forward regarding assets. Next, we're looking at creating a high level of privacy so that hangers-on for that child, just they can't figure out what the parents own. They really don't have hard facts to establish that this child is going to inherit a bunch of stuff, so let's target that person. Number three, we're looking at creating an estate plan that where a trust for that child springs into effect when the parents pass away, because that trust can create guidelines that an outright transfer just will never be able to accomplish for us, such as protecting assets and ensuring they remain in the family. And then number four, or last, we're looking at responsibility. If we need to create levels of responsibility to ease that child into managing and controlling the inherited assets. So those are four things we look at.
Well, thank you very much for that very thorough analysis, Jay. I'm glad that we're able to review this. And one of the things that we're always happy to do is to highlight some of the things that you've shared with us today. And thank you very much. And were there any other things that you feel that you'd like to address for this question?
Well, one, which is that team approach that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Drafting all this is great, but if the CPA and the financial planner aren't on board with updating beneficiary designations and coordinating account titles, all the great planning that you draft in an estate plan can unravel completely. So once you come up with a plan with your counselor, then coordinating that team approach to coordinate all these moving pieces so that all the funds flow into that trust and everyone knows what to expect, that's the last step that's so crucial in the overall planning process. So if I added a fifth thing, it'd be coordinating among the professionals to make sure we follow this plan when the parents pass. If somebody can benefit from that, I hope it's helpful. And if I can do anything else for you guys, let me know.
All right. Thank you very much, Jay.
Oh, you're welcome.